I'm
Yeah.
hearing you and I'm remembering like this very keen awareness of where Blackness landed in this hierarchy. So you were saying,
Exactly. Yeah, but what ended up happening is like that is a time where there was a habit where every day, I was getting told that I was bad or, okay. And so I end up getting like spankings every day.
Welcome to Radical Remembering with psychologist Dr. Narissa Williams. This is a weekly conversation where we explore ways we've internalized oppression and consider what it really means to live liberated. Each episode would leave you with intimate knowledge of the liberation process, sprinkle a little healing magic, and leave you with wisdom for your journey. As you get settled in for today's episode, please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you've liked what you heard at the end, please share.
so welcome to another episode of Radical Remembering. We have Coach Sakile from Embrace Your Free here with us today. So I'll start with a little bit of an introduction how I came to know you. It was I don't even remember the years. COVID just like meshed everything together. But it was sometime during COVID when Omicron was like a big thing. And I had actually just moved to New Jersey. I'm a New Yorker. I just stay in New Jersey. But I had just moved to New Jersey, and this is where it was highest, right? The highest in the whole country was Essex County with this Omicron virus. I have an autoimmune condition. And so they were still doing like these kind of hybrid things where you could like zoom in. And so I was like, this is what we're going to do. I reached out to the teachers. Nobody's contacting us, right? There's no engagement at all between the school, and it's one of the best in the top 5% in the country,
Wow.
supposedly, but there's really no engagement between the community. My son hadn't even made friends in like that 4 month period or whatever. And so what happened? And so they let him watch, but then at the end they were like, "Oh, we're not giving him a grade for anything. He's failing." I'm like, "What kind of madness is that?"
What?
Exactly. So I told my son, and he was like, "Can you just homeschool me, please?" And I was like, "Okay." And so I had an example of my sister. She has 4 kids and she's homeschooled. The first one was 12 when she started
Okay.
homeschooling. She's 25, 26 now. And so
Wow.
she had a long history, and I had seen from her, like, you can have a lot of success with this. You can curate the experience that you want. But because I
Absolutely.
was working, I was like, I don't know. And so that's when I started looking around for what to do, how to do it. And so in my search, I came across you. I'll finish what I ended up doing, and then I'll say what I liked about you. And so I ended up, because he was in the second half of his 11th grade year,
Ah,
I just let him finish the courses that he was gonna take, that he was enrolled in anyway. We
okay.
just finished that out, and then I enrolled him in a community college that gave college credit
Nice.
to homeschool students. So he went
Fantastic.
into college. I think he had, was it 9 credits? Let me see. 9 credits, and it would have been more. It would have been more like 12 or 15. But he,
Mm,
he that curve into high school. I mean, into college, he had to like get adjusted for that and take some courses over. Not
okay.
because he failed, but because he could have done better for the major that he wanted. And
Makes
so,
sense.
what I liked about you is that there were homeschool models that were modeling it after the traditional school. I also learned about unschooling, which I really liked too, because that is just like, wait, we don't have to follow this paradigm at all. But then I got to you and I learned about world schooling. And for me, that felt like like out of the water altogether, just like the epitome of liberation, the epitome of freedom, and just like dismantling that whole hierarchical structure that is education right now.
Absolutely.
And doing it on your own terms. And I just imagine that your children are they've traveled a lot. Like, I know this, right? This is from what I read, right? So I imagine that they are so experienced, and they have a wealth of knowledge that cannot be compared to your typical public school child. So this is where I've come to know you from, have attended a master class or two and been on your email list, and I know you have a podcast. So after I'm like all gushing, can you share a little bit about who you are and what world schooling is?
Absolutely. Thank you for the amazing introduction. And I am truly honored to be in your presence and on this amazing adventure, homeschool adventure with you, and to share my experience with you in the audience. So definitely it's an honor. But a little bit about me. I am a wife and a mother of 6 children. And my oldest child will be 21 this year, and my
Wow.
youngest will be 11. So it's been a long journey and it's been a beautiful journey. And a little bit about me, my company is called Embrace Your Free because freedom is very important. And that has been a goal of mine my entire life, to be able to have the freedom to be, do, and have whatever I desire, be able to curate my life. And so, of course, when I had children, I wanted to apply that philosophy to them. I wanted them to be able to be, do, and have anything they wanted, right? And so it was always like, what is the best approach to provide them with the tools to really discover who they are and to really optimize who they are? And once I went to grad school for education, I was able to learn about different educational practices that are not like traditional, but I'm like, these practices are amazing. Why aren't they being implemented in the school system? Like they have studies and statistics that there are alternative work types of learning that provide children with amazing outcomes where they're able to retain more information, they're enjoying learning, they're able to surpass, what many people are able to achieve in traditional school. And so once I discovered that, I was able to like implement a lot of that into my children's education. And one of the things that I really, really loved is teaching to your child's learning style. Like there's variety of different learning styles, there's variety of personalities. You have your own unique teaching style to ask a parent to be like, this is the one way to teach, not taking account of a parent's work schedule, their personality, their goals. I think that is a mistake. And so I end up creating the LIT system, which is basically the children's learning style, their identity persona, the parents' teaching style, and the time that the parents do have to homeschool or the time that a child can focus homeschooling. So taking into the account both, the child and the parent to make a homeschooling environment that really enhances and cultivates a child's, learning environment where they're eager to learn,
Mhm.
where education ends up not being something that they have to do. It's just like, this is who I am. I am a brilliant person and I want to learn, like as a human being, like it makes sense to want to improve myself, to learn more information. Why not? Right. So I feel like this approach ends up creating lifelong learners where children just automatically understand that learning is everywhere. Learning is what we do. Every opportunity is an opportunity to learn. And I was learning that children typically retain 10% of what they read after 2 weeks.
Mhm.
20% of what they hear after 2 weeks, 30% of what they see, but
Mhm.
90% of what they experience, they
Mhm.
retain.
Mhm.
So, why wouldn't we incorporate more hands-on learning where they're teaching each other, where they're going on field trips, where they're having internships, where instead of just learning about a city and the history in a book, actually going to the city and going to the historical sites. So that's kind of how we approached world schooling, when it comes to not just, traveling, but making it experiential and also incorporating our children's unique learning styles, personalities, my unique, teaching style, my husband's unique teaching styles, what our goals are, and the amount of time we have based on, what's going on with our business or our children's personality, their attention span based on their age and things like that.
Love it. So basically you've individualized the learning so each of them you're doing something different. Your approach is
Yes,
different.
yes, yes. So they all are exposed to the same subjects, but if a child is more kinesthetic, I'm not going to make them sit down in a seat. While we're learning a lesson, I may have them fixing something or repairing something or doing jumping jacks as we're learning a lesson. So depending on the child's personality, they'll still learn the same lessons. It's just the way that we curate the environment, how we're
Mhm.
able to introduce it so that it's enjoyable for them, where they retain more, where they want to learn, where it's not like drudgery, like, oh, I have to do
Mhm.
this again. Oh, it's so horrible. By the time they get to like high school, if they've been homeschooling for a period of time, then they usually, for my children, and I notice other children, they tend to take more responsibility when it comes to their education and what they want to learn. So, more so, the personality and the learning style is more for the younger children, but it's something still to look at as a high school and a young adult. But by the time they're in high school, they're able to learn from pretty much any learning style, because we've exposed them to different, but they know like if I want to study and I really want to maximize what I'm learning, I'm going to use these certain techniques,
Mhm.
versus, if I'm a visual learner, I'm not going to use a bunch of audio techniques to learn because I'm just going to spend more time. It's not very efficient. It's going to be frustrating. So by the time that they're older, they understand and they have used various techniques that they know that this works for me. But of course, they they use all learning styles because they don't live in a bubble. So,
Right.
but they know if I really want to learn this, like this is an efficient, effective way so that I can maximize my time, my energy, and have more time to do the things I enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. So one of the things also that my sister modeled it for me as well as, coming to know about you the 2 years ago when I did, we took a trip, just also along the lines of experiential learning. We took a trip. My son, I don't even remember. I think it was, I guess it was US history. He was doing US history and African American literature. And
Mm,
so we took a trip. We went to uh, I'm trying to remember the sites. We went to a lot of sites, but it was a 2-week trip from here all the way to Kentucky and back. We stopped and we saw and in Atlanta, we saw the MLK, like, I don't know what they call it, like I guess they call it like a national park area, but they have a museum there where he lived, where he was born, where he and Coretta were buried. Then we also went to Birmingham, Alabama to see the church, and we were in the park where the children were, that got hosed down. We also went to the Legacy Museum, Brian Stevenson's Legacy Museum. My son loves Muhammad Ali. So in Kentucky, we went to the Muhammad Ali home and the museum. And I know I'm forgetting things. It was an amazing trip, one that we still talk about and like won't soon forget. But I saw, oh, you know what was really good too? When we were in Birmingham, we were going to the church. Was it? No, it was one of the houses that MLK lived at when he was pastoring a particular church that got bombed. And
mm,
so we were like kind of last minute and we didn't get a tour scheduled. And somebody was like, "Oh, you can go right down there." It was a souvenir shop where this woman was. And we loved the culture. So we also learned something about the culture because we knocked the door and nobody was there. Somebody rode by in a pickup truck and they were like, "You looking for such and such?" And we were like, "Yes, we are." Right? New Yorkers, we're not used to that, right? And so then they were like, "Oh, she's just wrapping some lunch up here, such and such. Just wait, she'll be here in 10 minutes." So she came super nice and warm. And she took us on a tour, and then she pointed out, oh, this is Dr. Montgomery, who lived next door from the time she was a child. So she still lived in the family house. Her father
Wow.
was,
Getting chills.
yes, it was so beautiful. We sat on the porch with this woman for like 2.5 hours, and she told us stories of when, yeah, the freedom fighters were in her house. Like, so when people were like, where are they? Her father was a pharmacist and hid them in her house, in the house for 3 days. She told us stories of the boycotts and how organized it was and what you really need for a political movement. And my son was there for all of this. We also crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And
Mhm.
at the end of the bridge, the last known man, he was 97 at that time. I hope he's still living. But the last known man that was alive in crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge was there, right? And yeah, he was there.
Wow.
We have a picture and everything, pulled my son aside and told him what it was. And he was like, he was sharing that when he first crossed the bridge.
If you enjoy listening to Radical Remembering and would love to get the season drop before everyone else, if you want exclusive invites to live and virtual events and could benefit from daily liberation inspiration like affirmations, thought-provoking questions, and daily guidance, then download our free app Living Liberated in the App Store or on Google Play. You can also find the link below in the description box.
He was really, when the police came and started beating them up, and Martin Luther King was like, nonviolence and get on a knee. He was like, what? And he said he was so mad. Like, we came this far for this nonsense to allow ourselves to get beat up or whatever. But he shared how his view has transformed, and that, how that form of resistance is a valid form of resistance, right? But imagine we never, we were locked into 8 to 3, whatever the school system schedule is, school system. We
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to do that. We
Exactly. And
exactly,
that is a rich experience that your son will never forget. Like I said,
exactly.
that is something that's gonna impact him and it will unfold in his life in subconscious ways that he won't
Yes,
even be aware of. So that is such a beautiful experience. And even for
yes,
you, and that's the one thing
yes,
I love about world schooling. I'm just like, if my children get, amazing benefits from it, great. That's the goal. But I'm growing,
right,
I'm
exactly.
learning, I'm loving this. And so they get to see also me as an adult continue to learn. Like this is what
Yes,
they expect. They
love
see
it.
me and their father constantly reading, constantly going to these examples because we did similar things. Like we went to Massachusetts and we were able to visit Malcolm X's home. We
Wow,
found out that he worked at the Omni Hotel with a Vietnamese president in the past. So it was like two like political leaders worked
wow,
at the Omni Parker Hotel. And then we were able to buy like the Boston cream pie. That's where it was originally made. And so
wow.
it's just like we're learning all this history. We also went to the home of in Massachusetts. Why is it starts with the E? Because we went to his home in Ghana and Massachusetts. Oh my goodness, my mind
The
is
voice?
yes. The
Okay.
Yes. So his mother had a property in the 1800s, and he was one of the first Black families to
Wow.
have property, and it's still there. We got to, do a tour of it. And so it was
Yay.
like great because, they read the book, the autobiography of Malcolm X, and they got to read some books about like the 10 percenters and all of that. And it was great to like actually experience like the physical locations where these people actually walked. And
Yes.
so I think, the great thing about, world schooling is you do get to have these amazing experiences, not just read in a book, but you get to actually experience. And sometimes when you read like history books, they are slanted. They have a political agenda. So
Hmm.
they come from the perspective of the person that's the group of people that are in power. and they spin things in a way to influence you.
Yeah.
So when you go to a place, you actually like get to speak to people that have actually experienced it, or get to see for yourself, like, oh, I read this, but this is not what I'm experiencing. So it teaches you to question. And
Hmm.
like, okay, many times I read something, and when I actually experienced it, it wasn't what I read, it was like partial truths and
Hmm.
other untruths. So it helps with also critical thinking, not just to accept everything you're told, everything
Yeah.
that you read, but to question and say, let me dig into this a little bit further. Let me go talk to some other people who actually experienced it from both perspectives and come up with my opinion, you know,
Hmm.
based on it. So they get to learn like the scientific method,
Hmm.
not hypothesis, whatever, but
Right.
real life, right? In various areas. So
Yeah.
I think
So
that's
where have you, like, what countries have you been? What states have you been with the children in your world schooling?
yes. So from 2016 to 2020, we were doing a US tour where we visited over 100 cities. So we visited over 110 cities in the US, which was really cool. So all the way from the West Coast to the southern states to, the East Coast and the center. So it was a really great experience where we would spend basically, because it was like over 48 months, we would spend like a month in different states, visiting different locations, historical sites. We would go to resorts, we would go to national parks, like I said, historical locations. We would meet with also, almost experts. So glass makers, we would go visit chocolate factories. Like we would, volunteer on farms. We would do volunteering. Each month we would volunteer visiting like an elderly home,
Mm.
people who maybe their family isn't visiting them, and having a child read to them or talk to them just made their day. Or volunteering at food pantries or cleaning beaches or things like that. So even children that are very young, they can contribute into making the world a better place. It's not something that you have to do when you're older, right? As adult, you can make a difference now. So I really, really, yeah. So we end up going to over 110 cities in the
Wow.
US, and then in 2020, COVID hit. So we were planning on doing a 100-country tour. So we haven't gotten too far with our travels, but we visit like Puerto Rico a few times since 2020. We went to Canada and we're in Mexico currently, Belize, the Bahamas, Ghana, and France. And I've been to like Cote d'Ivoire and Togo without the children. So we were able to visit some countries, and yeah, we end up becoming residents of Mexico. And so now we're staying here, building up our reserves so we can travel on. So we're still on our 100-country tour.
Love it.
Yeah.
So your oldest, the 21-year-old, did he, because I imagine the 11-year-old, was he all homeschooled? Or I don't know if it's a daughter or son, but were they
Yeah.
homeschooled the whole time or?
Yeah. So my older three were in school for 2 years.
Yeah.
So they went to this amazing African-centered school called Betty Shabazz in Chicago. It was amazing. So I actually, the first year that my son went to school, so my oldest son actually went 3 years, but the first year I attended school with him every day.
Oh,
It was an
love.
open door policy. I just
Ah,
wanted to make sure that the school actually supported our values and principles.
yeah.
We're vegetarian, the school is vegetarian, it's very Afrocentric. The day will open up with African drumming and dancing with the
Ooh.
Pan-African flag. They were learning to speak in ancient Kemetic languages,
Wow, wow, wow.
Swahili, various African languages. And everything was taught from mathematics to history to science from an African's perspective. So the children were brilliant and they were super confident. But after my first, like the first year where I attended the school, my younger three children at the time, they attended also. So they had a little special table for my twin daughters to sit. So they were learning right along, and I was volunteering. I had a vegan baked good business at the time. So I was providing, the baked goods for the school, which was great. So like they really worked to support the business. And then that's when I went to school the following year for education.
Yeah.
And then my husband, he actually went to school for traditional Asian medicine. So we're like, okay, everyone's going to school for a couple of years. And when I finish, when I finish, uh, you guys can come back home. So it was a great experience for them. Everybody at the school was mama and baba, and everyone treated each other like family. The problem was even while they were in school, I had a world schooling, mindset. So I remember taking them out of school like, oh, we're gonna go to Washington, D.C. We're gonna see, we're gonna go to the different Smithsonians. We're gonna go see the White House. We're gonna see the mirrors, which are like the monument, which are like, and how Benjamin Banneker has designed Washington,
Yeah.
D.C., after ancient Kemet, and just learning the history. And then when I came, they're just like, you can't just take the children out, you know? And I was constantly taking them out. And they're like, if you continue to do this, we're going to have to give your children's space to someone else. So I'm like, well, we're not going to stop traveling. So there's an opportunity, if the Joffrey Ballet comes in town and it's like a special event for like homeschooling children that's during the day where they actually get to meet, the dancers and question that, oh, they're coming out of school.
Right.
So it didn't really work. It was a beautiful experience, but it was only supposed to be temporary, but it was a great experience. And then we went back to full time. My younger two have never been in school at all. They've only homeschooled, but those, you know, 2 years for my younger three and 3 years for my oldest. I guess it was 3 years for all of them because that one year they were all attending with me, even though they weren't officially like enrolled in the school. So I thought that was beautiful that they
Yeah.
allowed my other three children to attend kindergarten.
Right. Right.
And I could attend. And my son ended up being valedictorian of
Wow.
kindergarten, and he got a letter written to him by President Obama at the time
Wow.
he still has a letter from his academic achievements. And it was amazing. It was a great experience.
It sounds like it. So it sounds like you also, if you also were like never the type of person to be, what's the word? Locked in, you always wanted your freedom. You were like, yeah, I mean, this is great, but I need my freedom. So how was that you? Is that just your personality? Is that something you learned?
I think as a child, I was very I don't know. I was always very like outspoken, very different. And
Mhm,
I would get in trouble a lot
mhm,
for my perspectives. Even though I was a straight A student, I was the fastest in my school, in my class, the
mhm.
strongest, like I could arm wrestle anyone, girl or boy. Could do more push-ups, more pull-ups. Straight A student, I was considered the class artist, everything. Like I was super competitive, but I did not understand the like the social cues. Like I wasn't very good with social cues. So, if I saw something, like I remember seeing one of my grandmother's friend and she dyed her hair red, like really bright engine red. And I was just like, oh my You look like Bozo the Clown. How cool.
Right.
Get her out. Don't let her come back. But I would like, oh my goodness, I would get in trouble. I mean, I would get my little bottom spanked every day. Like, there wasn't a day that I was not in trouble. And I just could not understand. I'm like, I'm just speaking my truth. If I see something, I'm sharing it. There's things that I wanted to explore. I was constantly reading. Like, my grandmother taught me to read at a year and a half. And so I was
Wow.
constantly, yes. And she had me potty trained at 6 months. I'm like, my
Wow.
grandmother
Wow.
was special. But she was just like, but you're so smart. You're able to do it. Yes. Because I was her first grandchild.
Uh-huh.
So she pulled out all the stops. I was the first grandchild for both of my parents' side of the family. So
Uh-huh.
I got so much energy and time like poured into me. And I was really eager to learn because
Mhm.
I would see my parents and my grandparents like reading newspapers every day. And I'm like, I want to do it. And I remember her teaching me to read, but it was like only little words like man, can, at, ant. And I'm trying to read the newspaper and I'm like,
Liberation is 100% about being in right relationship with our power. It's so easy from day to day to disconnect from our source and forget who we really are. On our app, Living Liberated, we have the tools to keep you plugged in. You'll find a library of affirmations, guided meditations, guided journeys, and tapping sequences to keep you in a state of alignment with who you really are. Topics range from self-love, healthy relationships, activating our DNA, to guided journeys with your ancestors. Download our free app, Living Liberated, and start your free 7-day trial now in the App Store or Google Play. You can also find the link for Plugged In the description box below.
having temper tantrums, having straight meltdowns. So, so I was always eager to read. And I think the adventures and the history really inspired me. And the first school I went to was I wouldn't say it's an international school. It was a private school, but like I was the only Black female in my class, and there was two Black males. And I remember meeting like an Indian girl, an Indian guy, like, "Oh, you're Black." And they were just like, "No, we're Indian." I'm like, "You're darker than me. Please, you're Black." And they're just like, "We're not. And we have like Japanese and Chinese and Vietnamese, Filipinos, in my class. And, I was just like, "Oh, you're all Chinese." And they're just like, "No, I'm Japanese. No, I'm Vietnamese." So it really opened my mind up because to me, you're either Black, white, Mexican, or Chinese. When I was a child. And so this school like opened up my mind like, oh my goodness, there's a whole world out there that I'm
Wow.
completely ignorant about. There's different languages. Like my Indian friend would bring her lunch and let me try it, like chapatis and samosas. I like fell in love with Indian food and different
Mhm.
and things that my parents never tried or would never even think of trying. I was like open to different experiences, I think because of that. But also, like when I was in second grade, I had a teacher that it was like there was three Black people again, two boys and one girl, that was me. And then there was one like Euro guy that like half the class was like people from European descent. And there was just four of us that would get notes sent home every day about our behavior. So we'll get like bad, okay, or good, right? And I've very seldom ever got good. Every day I was bad or okay. And every day I was bad or okay, I would get that bottom. Parents weren't spending their good money on a private school for me to just be okay or
Mhm.
bad, even though I was making straight A's. And I did not understand why. I mean, that one child, he was like really a problematic, but the two like Black boys, they didn't do anything different than the other children. And I started thinking like, okay, I'm noticing like people that the people that look like me are like just bad or okay, even
Yeah.
though I'm getting the best grades in the class. I'm the class artist. I'm like, answering all the questions, trying to do everything to get this teacher to like me, but she didn't. And so it ended up really impacting my self-esteem, where I was just like, I don't want to be Black. I don't want to be Black. I'm like, this
Because
is
how old were
horrible.
you? How old were you at that
I
time?
was 7. I was
Mm,
7. Yeah. I didn't have that experience before that
yeah,
or
yeah.
after that, but it had such, a whole year of getting spanked every day. And then the habit ended up perpetuating.
Yeah.
So,
I
like,
also
I,
just to interject, I remember, and I don't know why I thought of this recently, probably like last week or the week before. In first grade, there was a dog house, right? So
oh,
the teacher used to draw a house, and if you were quote bad, she would put your name in it. And I remember in first grade observing that it's only the Black, and there was one Puerto Rican kid. It was only their names, especially the boys, that ended up being in the dog house. And so I remember thinking about, I mean, we begin to become aware of race between the ages of 3 to 5. And then 5 is when it kind of like crystallizes that I am a racialized person in the world, particularly in these racialized contexts that we live in. So I'm
yeah,
hearing you and I'm remembering like this very keen awareness of where Blackness landed in this hierarchy. So you were saying,
exactly. Yeah, but what ended up happening is like that is a time where there was a habit where every day, I was getting told that I was bad or, okay. And so I ended up getting like spankings every day.
"Mm,
And then it started happening on the weekends. So it was just like a year.
oh
Whereas
man,
like even with my parents, like they just took the teacher said she's bad, so she's bad. And it ended up continuing on for the rest of my childhood. It's like a stigma that ended up sticking and like it never really got better with
I
my
wonder you were
parents.
with your kids every day. I would have been too. Like, let me just make sure.
Yes. I'm like, we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very traumatic. And so I end up having like a racial crisis at a really young age.
Yeah.
And eventually, the following year, I ended up finding Uncle Tom's Children
Mm,
in, I think I was 8, in my parents' library by Richard Wright. And it started talking about all the trials and tribulations that, Black people went through during the Jim Crow period, from the
mm.
lynchings to the rapes to you know, all of that, right? And so I'm reading that at 8, and I'm
At
just
8.
like, oh, and I read that book like over 20 times. So I'm just like, oh, and it was really traumatic. Like I was really traumatized, but I realized it's not us
Yeah.
as a Black person. There's something very wrong with this society and
Mhm.
this group of people. So I stopped, it ended up going from like, I don't want to be Black to like, I need to really protect my people. And I'm very proud of my people.
Yeah.
And I need to find more about our history. And then learning like, okay, our history doesn't just begin in slavery and
Yeah.
then Jim Crow and then now, but we had like a really rich history, thousands of years that impacted the whole world in a beautiful way, powerful way that really, really, helped me come out of that to really help boost my self-esteem. Because if I was just to hold on that I'm just bad and just Black people are bad, that
Right.
would have just left to depression and I'll kind of like, I can see why people act out and create negative outcomes for their life because your mindset is really important. If you think that you're bad, you're going to create and act in a way that you think that you are.
Right.
And so that's why I really wanted, like, my children are so much more confident
Mhm.
than I have ever been. They're
Mhm.
so confident in
Mhm.
themselves and in their identities and what they're capable of. And I think it's because, of that foundation of seeing
Yeah.
the greatness of their people. And then also, they would go over all these inventions that African Americans have created in the US. It's amazing. Like from everything from the cell phone to the vacuum cleaner to the refrigerator to the freezer to the stoves to the iron to the ironing boards to the stoplights to the blood
Mhm.
banks to satellites I mean
Yeah.
every area. And I know there's a lot more people whose names are not known because they're working for other corporations. Like my dad, he had seven
Wow.
patents, right,
Wow.
for the stain resistant carpets that came
Wow.
out in the 1989. I remember that. And I remember talking to my dad like we could be like billionaires. What? Why are you? He's just like, well, they're providing the insurance, they have all the equipment, they have all the tools. So of course they gave him a little bonus check, but the and he had on a wall the patents on his wall, but it's under the corporation's names.
Mhm.
So I'm just like, how many inventions? And I've talked to many people that their parents, or family members, they have similar stories. So
Mhm.
I'm just like, we're not just creative in the sense
Yeah.
of dancing and singing. We're creative when it comes to languages. Like, I was looking up the urban dictionary. Like each year, there's a new urban dictionary. Like
Really?
each year, yes, there's a new urban
A
dictionary of
physical
new
one or
slang
online?
online.
Okay.
Online, there's a new urban dictionary of new words that we're saying, and a lot of them are created by us. I mean, like, we're creators of languages. How do you think languages come about?
Right, right,
Exactly what
right.
you're seeing right now. Like each year, new terms. We create languages, culture, science, mathematics, it's just like every area we thrive, but we forget that. We're not
Yeah,
taught that, you
yeah,
know? And so that's things that I made very prevalent
right.
in our education because I think, I have students from all over the world, and Japanese go to Japanese school on the weekend. Jews go to Jew school on Saturday. Chinese go to Chinese school on Saturday to learn
They sure
about their
do.
culture,
Mhm.
right? Which is very, very important to know
In a
about your
systematic
culture.
way, you know?
Yes, and
What
it's
we're teaching implicitly is important, but what you're saying is also that this happens in systematic ways, and that
yeah.
might be a gap in a lot of our households.
Yes, consciously,
Yeah,
to say like this is our history, not being taught by someone else, but taught by us,
yeah,
in a empowering way. You know,
absolutely.
so where our children are proud of themselves and they feel confident and they love themselves and they love their history and they love their people. And so that's something that we do when we travel to different locations or different countries. We find out the history of Africans. Like, for instance, the
Yeah.
second president of Mexico was a Black man. Like, you
Oh,
would
wow.
never know that.
Yeah, me
You would
either.
never
Yeah.
know that, right? And so, and there used to be a huge African population, but of
Mhm.
course, during the Spanish and Mexican War, the Spanish was like, fight for us, we'll give you your freedom. The Mexicans like, fight for us, you have our freedom. And they put them at the front lines. So who was getting like wiped out but us?
Right,
So the
right.
population after the war was like really, and then after that a lot of intermixing. There's still some communities that are still prevalently, Black Mexicans, but it's very small when we
Mhm.
used to have large populations. And that goes with a lot of Central and South American countries. Like, we have a really rich history and
Mhm.
impact, but you just have to dig for it. You have to search, you have to talk to
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
ask the right questions. So that's what I
So,
really love about both.
yeah, I love it. I mean, I think even listening to you, you can hear how rich of an experience even this has been, of course, for your children, but even you, but you've been a lifelong learner as it is. What was I thinking? I wanted to ask, there was something I wanted to ask, I forgot. You were saying, I forgot what I wanted to ask, but this came to mind when you were talking earlier. you were, because I was, my son, when he went into school, he was so full of personality, all these kinds of things. But once he entered kindergarten, that personality began to change and began to change quickly. And he wasn't as confident and he didn't think that he was smart. And, I think that he has a shy element to him. You know what I mean? But all of a sudden it's like, well, you don't, he tickled me in kindergarten. I was like, well, oh, I think it was first grade. And I was like, well, if you don't understand, if she's going too fast, just raise your hand and ask her. And he said, you don't know me. I'm shy. It's like, it's 6. You don't know me. I think I'm the only one that really does know you. But he became a different version of himself. I did see a
Yeah.
difference in since he was homeschooled, right? Because there are so much different messaging to him about his value and his place in society as a Black boy in the school systems
Absolutely.
that I've now seen him, even like he came back, it wasn't even, so he started college in September. By Thanksgiving, we were talking and I was like, who is this? Like the level of confidence that he has. So I'm saying that as in thinking of your own experience and the socio-emotional consequences for our children in these schools. Now I remember what I was going to ask. I was going to ask, so how much time does it take you in planning, like
Oh,
the curriculum for your kids?
yeah, it doesn't take a lot of time because basically, like my husband also helps. So when they're younger, we would just have like lessons from 7 a.m. to 9, like their academic lessons. So it wouldn't be a lot. And so we would just get like 30 minutes of math, 30 minutes of like reading, 30 minutes of like spelling some kind of language arts, 30 minutes of a foreign language, Spanish or something like that. And then within like the reading, for instance, they're learning history
Mhm.
or they're learning science. So we would, or if they're learning cursive, we would also be learning African proverbs. So they were doing
Okay.
cursive
Nice.
or their address. So we would like each subject would be like multiple subjects, but it would only be like 2 hours from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. So just like 4 25 minutes. Then after that, it was home economics, we would call it. We're eating breakfast, they're cleaning themselves, cleaning their rooms, organizing. And I'm in the midst of, preparing dinner and lunch. And then from typically around 12, by 11:30, 12, we're leaving the house. And that's when we were going to museums or concerts or the opera or the planetarium or the aquarium or seeing like volunteering or something. So we would do that at least 6 days a week, like 11:30ish to around 3. And we would pack our lunch because they needed to get out the house. Because if they stay in the house would be a mess. So we would eat out. So from like 11:30 until around 6, they would be out of the house. And
Mhm.
then from around 3:30 until around 6, that's when they were doing things like their basketball, their gymnastics, the
Mhm.
swimming, the football, the cooking classes, the photography, jewelry making, coding, and all of that. So they would take classes with other like children, like after school programs. They would do
Yeah.
that. Then they would get home around 6:30. It's dinner time, you know, wash up. 7:30 is quiet reading time. I'm done. And so basically, we would have like their plans for their lessons, especially when they were younger. We would do that like on the weekends, and it wouldn't take me that long, maybe like an hour, like to, see, okay, this is what they've done so far. We would do like different workbooks, and then it would be a matter of scheduling like what different museums or what were which would also take me like an hour or two to just look at like, okay, oh, the circus is in town. Oh, this festival is going on this week. So I would just search and so, and find out events during that time slot, fill it in, and then I would text it to my homeschooling families that were in my area And so I would invite them, like, this is my schedule for the week. Feel free to meet us at these locations. And so different homeschooling families, most of my homeschooling families that I knew had 5 to 10 children. So
Mm,
we'll have 2 or 3 families get together and we have like 10 to 20 children, you know?
mhm.
So my children would
Wow.
have like homeschoolers typically who had similar values and principles as they were, other African American homeschoolers that they would meet. And then, in the afternoon, they would meet with like, regular school age, regular public school or private school students where they would do football, baseball, whatever that with. But it didn't take a long time because we would just like, I might spend like a day or two, like at the beginning of each, season or semester to, come up with their schedule. And then after that, it was just a matter of a couple hours each week tweaking it. So
Mhm.
it wasn't that bad. Now that the children are older, they pretty much, we just meet like once a week and they just go over what they completed, what they learned. They really help each other. Like they'll learn something and then each person will get up and present what they learned.
Wow,
So
wow.
like each day, and then even when we travel, like when we travel now, if we go to a different country or a different city or something, we want to know like what produce, what do they export? What do they import? What's their GDP? What are the demographics? What's the, when were they founded? Like some historical things. So each person will research different things. So we're in the airport. It's a great time to pass time. They'll get up and give their little presentation. So before
Wow,
we
wow.
get to the country, like now I'm like, okay, now I know all about this country or I know about this new region. So it's really great. So for me and them. So they're working on their writing, their public speaking. I mean, because other people will be sitting there at the airport watching, like, oh, this is interesting.
Right.
We have them stand up and yeah, so
That's funny.
it doesn't have to take a lot of time to plan.
Yeah,
It's usually like planning, at the beginning of each semester, and
yeah.
then it's just a couple hours each week, if that. It
Okay.
doesn't take a lot.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And it sounds so manageable and so doable. I mean, in my own the year and a half that I did homeschool, because he was older too, it was a lot like that. And I can't even remember the name. I think it's called Resplendence Arts. He was taking Tree as for his
Oh,
foreign language.
true,
Yeah.
Ghana,
Yeah,
yes.
his father is Ghanaian. My first husband was Ghanaian. And so he
Oh,
did that and he went to Ghana that year. And this past summer, we
yes.
also went to Ghana and his teachers were in Ghana.
Oh,
They were in Ghana.
nice.
And so
Okay.
that also brings me to something that I wanted to ask you too. So I saw on your website that you've done something. And first, let me tell you why it excited me, right? So I studied abroad in Ghana in 2000,
Oh,
right? And
nice.
yeah, I remember being in a stadium one day, the Hearts of Oak Stadium, and someone turned to me and he was like, I heard, like it was a big myth. I heard that Africans were taken from the continent and brought to the America for slavery. Like what is that, right? And I was like, they're using, and I had conversations with other Ghanaians, like, what is that about? Like, why does that sound like it's a myth? And he was like, it's textbooks. It's what we're learning in school and how limited it is. So I saw on your website that you've done some work. Help me fill in the gap. You've done some
Yes.
work related
So
to
I worked with Chicago State University, the USAID, and the Ghanaian Ministry of Education in a program called Textbooks and Learning Material, TMLP program. And well, yeah, textbook and learning material program. And the whole purpose was before the textbooks all reflected the European experience, the European culture, the European everything from their perspective. So we were able to remake the language arts, the science, the math, various textbooks where it reflected the Ghanaian culture. So they saw themselves, they saw, their foods and, so
Love it.
so they can have pride in their education. Like, yes, like this education is for me. Like my
Yes.
people learn, my people are important. So I really, really love the program, and the parents loved the textbooks
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I was also a field researcher. So we went to Ghana, traveled to all 10 regions, interviewing
Mm.
parents, teachers, principals, which they call the head teachers, to
Mm.
see what they thought about the books and how we can improve them, what their experience has been. But it was amazing. I
Love
loved it.
it. I
Yeah,
love
so
it.
culturally relevant textbooks.
Yeah,
It's really important.
it
And I'm
is.
just thinking, like, you didn't go to Elmina Castle? You haven't heard
Right?
of that? Like,
Exactly. Exactly.
it's right there.
Right here, right here. So that, and so in thinking about world schooling too, how informative. So my daughter was 4 on our trip, right? Well, she loves, her father is very well, I think we're both crafty, but he spends more times in craft. So from the time she was small, when boxes came, it was like, let's make something out of the box. So she made a
Oh, I
car
love it.
couple about a month or two ago, and in the car she's like, come on, we're going to Ghana. And so for me, like, what a win that is to have that in her consciousness at this early age, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I really think that what you're doing is expansive. And so lastly, can you tell us what Embrace Your Free is? What do you do with that?
Yeah. So basically with Embrace Your Free, we help families create and live the life of their dreams, not someday, not one day, but today. Because tomorrow's not promised, right? Like, it's some really sad statistics out there that, like, I always want to make it less, but we're going to say 95% of people, like just in the US, right, die with most of their dreams unfulfilled.
Mhm.
95%,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
most of the people are not like, they're not even dreaming. They've like given up. They just get caught in the rat race of just like, work, like sleep,
Yeah.
work, rest, TV, go back to work, whatever. Then I have like a couple hours on the weekends, but I have to
Yeah.
do everything to pack in. But they're not really living. So
Right.
Embrace Your Free is like here to provide the the inspiration to help you curate your dream life, whatever it is. And one of the segments is world schooling.
Mhm.
So we help families basically also create and finance a affordable homeschool curriculum that involves uh, traveling, affordable traveling with their family, and we also help them make money doing what they love from anywhere. So I think those are, to be a world schooler, you definitely want to have like an educational system that you can create that actually cultivate your child genius. Like, we really focus on your child's unique genius, their personality, their learning styles, how to make them a lifetime learner where they actually want to learn. They're begging you, like, oh, can we, like my children, can we go to the library today? Can we go to the bookstore? Like, please, Mom, can we go? Where it's just like, please, we just went yesterday. Can we like go another? Can we walk by ourselves? Please, I've read all my books. You just went and got a bunch of books. Are you serious? No. So that is like one of the aspects of it
Yeah,
when it comes to homeschooling. Yeah.
I
Helping
love it.
families create and finance that.
Good, I love it. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. Your enthusiasm and excitement about learning is infectious. Like, I want to grab a book now. But I think that there's so much benefit and value to people um leaning in and hearing more about what you do. So as usual, but in the description box below, we will have more information and resources from Coach Sakile so you can learn a little bit more if you're interested. Do you have any last words for the audience?
So, my last words are like, don't give up on your dreams. Keep dreaming. Like, there are your dreams for a reason. It's because they are possible, right? It's just a matter of maybe stepping back, maybe getting some assistance so that you can logically, step by steps, take little bite-sized steps to make it happen. But it's possible. Like, never stop dreaming. Anything's possible. I know it because I'm living what people would have told me is impossible. Like, when we started our world schooling full time in 2016, we were living off a budget of $2,000 a month. And we were staying at amazing resorts. And this is for a family of 8.
Wow.
So anything is possible if you're willing to take the risk, you're willing to do the research, willing to get that assistance and help. But yeah, your dream is for you. Don't give up on it.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you. And until the next time.
Thanks for listening. If you've loved what we've had to share and want to be the first to get releases of our new episodes and learn about events, download our free app, Living Liberated, in the Apple or Google Play Store.